Breaking right now on Morning News Now, 11th hour deal this morning after more than 5 weeks of war and wavering on the brink of what the president threatened was an apocalyptic level military offensive. The U.S. and Iran have agreed to a 2-week ceasefire. President Trump announcing the truce on social media last night, less than 2 hours before his deadline for Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz or face the death of a, quote, whole civilization. That threat drawing international outrage. This morning, dozens of Democrats are calling for the president to be removed from office as Pakistani officials presented the White House with a 10-point peace plan from the Iranians. President Trump calling it a workable starting point. The sudden about-face sending oil prices plunging back down under $100 a barrel. We start this morning with what we know about the terms, where the negotiations go next, and if that ceasefire is actually holding. Good morning, and thanks for joining me. I'm Sam Brock, in for Joe in Savannah this morning. We have a team of analysts and correspondents standing by to break down the latest on this whirlwind ceasefire. But first, let's go straight to NBC's Alice Barr, who is in Washington for us this morning. Alice, good to see you. What a last 12 hours. President Trump here announcing the 2-week ceasefire deal about 90 minutes before that deadline for Iran to open the Strait of Hormuz and reach a deal to end the war or a, quote, whole civilization would die, he said. What do we know at this hour about the ceasefire and the president's optimism over whether it's going to actually hold?
Good morning, Sam. The key here, as it has been for weeks now, is the Strait of Hormuz. President Trump said the ceasefire is subject to the complete, immediate and safe opening of what we know is that vital energy route, and that assuming Iran follows through on reopening it, the U.S. will suspend bombing and attacking Iran for 2 weeks. He said the U.S. had already achieved its military objectives and that Iran had proposed a 10-point plan that was a workable basis for negotiations toward a final peace deal. That proposal includes seeking the withdrawal of U.S. combat forces from all bases in the Middle East, and that controlled passage through the Strait of Hormuz would continue to be coordinated with Iran's armed forces. It's not clear how that will square with President Trump's demand for a complete reopening of the strait. Already, some major shipping companies have voiced doubts about restarting operations through there, and the president said the U.S. would be hanging around to be sure that everything goes well.
Right, Alice, you already mentioned several points that were considered non-starters for this administration, and yet here we are. This is potentially part of the ceasefire deal. Pakistan's prime minister, helping to broker the deal, has now invited leaders from the U.S. and from Iran to Islamabad this Friday to continue the peace talks. How's the White House responding to that?
Yeah, so the Pakistani prime minister said both the U.S. and Iran had displayed wisdom and understanding, and that he hopes the Islamabad talks, he's invited the two sides to attend this Friday, will achieve sustainable peace. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said that, quote, President Trump and our powerful military got Iran to agree to reopening the Strait of Hormuz and negotiations will continue. She said there are discussions about in-person talks, but that nothing is final until announced by the president or the White House.
All right, so we're standing by on that. Lastly, Alice, Secretary of State Marco Rubio also announcing on Tuesday that American journalist Shelley Kittleson had been freed in Iraq by a militia aligned with Iran's government. What more can you tell us about her kidnapping and this release?
So she is a freelance American journalist who was kidnapped a week ago near Baghdad by the Iran-backed Iraqi militia group Kataib Hezbollah. And Secretary of State Marco Rubio thanked the FBI, the Pentagon, and Iraqi partners for helping to secure her release. He said that this resolution, quote, reflects the Trump administration's steadfast commitment to the safety and security of American citizens, no matter where they are in the world, and that the State Department was relieved this American is now free and are working to support her safe departure from Iraq.
All right, Alice Barr getting us started from Washington this morning. Thank you so much. We move now to NBC News correspondent Danielle Hamamdjian, who joins us from London with more. Danielle, good to see you. Let's begin right away with the Iran's 10-point peace plan. Do we know what's in it? Because early reporting was it contained requests this administration would have considered absolutely non-starters. Now it's workable, according to the administration. How is Iran responding to the 2-week ceasefire?
Yeah, good morning, Sam. And Iran is reacting much like Donald Trump is and declaring victory. And perhaps this is a sign that this is indeed a workable plan where both sides can spin a win. All sides, of course, will have demands. What is in this 10-point plan that Donald Trump has described as a workable basis on which to negotiate? First things first, controlled passage through the Strait of Hormuz, coordinated with Iran's armed forces. Secondly, Iran says an end to the wars with militant groups in Yemen, Lebanon, and Iraq, what Iran calls the axis of resistance. The withdrawal of U.S. combat forces in the region, that's a big one. It's unclear how they're going to react to that. The full compensation of damages to Iran, what many will see as really unlikely, the lifting of sanctions on Iran, and the release of all frozen Iranian assets abroad. What's unclear, Sam, first of all, there are lots of questions here, but will Iran give up its enriched uranium or abandon its ballistic missile program? That's unclear, but I should point out that the Associated Press is reporting that the Farsi version of this plan did include the right to enrichment for Iran, something that was left out of the English version that was given to journalists.
Which, of course, was ostensibly the entire reason the administration began this invasion to begin with, right? Was to prevent Iran from developing nuclear capability. And you're saying sort of lost in translation between these two versions. So that's a huge point there. Do we know, Danielle, is the ceasefire holding?
There have been reported Iranian strikes across the Gulf region this morning. So though a ceasefire has been agreed, has it been enforced? It doesn't appear so. What's also unclear is the strait open? Are ships going through? That's unclear. And will Iran be charging a fee? Those are still questions up in the air. We did hear from one of the world's biggest shipping companies this morning, Maersk, who said the ceasefire may create transit opportunities, but does not yet provide full maritime certainty. And we do not yet understand the potential conditions attached. Sam, there was a collective sigh of relief, no doubt, around the world among leaders. Even the Pope has weighed in. Here in the UK, Keir Starmer will be traveling to the Gulf in the next few days. Worth noting, the Spanish Prime Minister posting on X earlier this morning. Now, the Spanish Prime Minister has been extremely critical of the U.S. and Israel throughout this war. He posted, "The government of Spain will not applaud those who set the world on fire just because they show up with a bucket." Now, I also want to point out that while much of the conversation today will be about geopolitics and the impact on the markets and the price of oil, it's also worth reflecting on the people of Iran here. Sure, there were some who were celebrating yesterday and who will continue to celebrate today, but many will be asking, what was all this for? Many of them took to the streets back in January and were met with brutal force by the regime. Some were arrested and some were executed in the past few days and weeks. And so now they find themselves with a regime that, despite what Donald Trump says, is much like the old one, but even more emboldened, and has proven that it has a very high threshold for pain.
Right. And the previous regime, by some reports, killed tens of thousands of people who were protesting. Danielle, I do want to ask one other thing here. Has Israel agreed to the ceasefire? And does the deal include Lebanon, where, of course, Israel is targeting the Iranian-backed militant group Hezbollah?
Yeah, this is adding another layer of complexity here. The Pakistan prime minister said that the ceasefire would include Lebanon. Israel said no, that it would continue fighting Hezbollah in Lebanon. The Israeli military, in fact, issuing yet another evacuation order for the southern Lebanese city of Tyre. Hundreds of thousands of people, as you know, have been forced to flee. A quick note, however, on the domestic side in Israel. Despite Donald Trump's enthusiasm here, we're not hearing the same tone by Benjamin Netanyahu in his office. He may not have wanted to go along with this, but he is going along with this. One opposition leader is describing this as a political disaster. For Israel, it has said over and over again what it considers an existential threat is the enriched uranium and the ballistic missile program. And we still don't know, as I said earlier, if that is going to be addressed in the negotiations.
Yeah, definitely still very much up in the air. Danielle, thank you so much for that report. We're now going to go to domestic politics here in the United States and bring in NBC News political reporter Megan Leibowitz, joining us from Washington with more on just these deluge of developments. Megan, good morning. So the ceasefire news yesterday was not enough to ease the concern of some members of Congress. We've learned that dozens of Democrats right now are calling for removing President Trump from office. Walk us through what they're saying even after this announcement.
Yeah, good morning, Sam. So more than 70 Democrats in Congress are now calling for the president to be removed from office, either through the vice president and the cabinet invoking the 25th Amendment in order to remove him, or by Congress voting to impeach and convict the president. Now, this is really the first time in President Trump's second term that we're seeing this groundswell of support from Democrats in Congress pushing for the president to ultimately be removed from office. And this comes even though Democrats have already obviously been very critical of the president's war on Iran. But this recent push yesterday comes in response to the president's remarks on Truth Social yesterday, where he threatened a whole civilization will die tonight. Now, that I do want to point you to what one senator in particular had to say, Senator Ed Markey. He wrote yesterday in a post that Congress must return from recess. He called for the president's impeachment and conviction, or for the cabinet to invoke the 25th Amendment in order for the president to be removed. He wrote, quote, "This is as grave a moment as the world has faced in the nuclear era." Now, Sam, even in the aftermath of the ceasefire, several Democrats still are saying that this is really too little too late, and that the president has already committed these offenses that they believe warrant the president to ultimately be removed from office. So I want to point you to what another member of Congress had to say. This is from Congressman Seth Moulton, who wrote, "Temporary ceasefire or not, Trump already committed an impeachable offense. Congress needs to get back to work and remove him from office before he does more damage to our country and the world." Now, obviously, in President Trump's first term, he was impeached twice. He was not convicted. If lawmakers ultimately try to move forward with a push to ultimately try to impeach him, Democrats would need some Republican support in order to get that over the finish line. And right now, there are Republicans who are critical of the president, but we have not heard any Republicans so far calling for the president's impeachment or removal.
Right. Well, that's the key question in all of this, right? I mean, there's pretty much been, Megyn, universal condemnation over the language that the president used, evoking this idea of wiping out a civilization. Most GOP leaders did not have too much to say following President Trump's early morning threat yesterday. Again, that a whole civilization will die if the Strait of Hormuz isn't reopened, hours before that ceasefire was announced. I guess the question here is, some Republicans are pushing back against the more extreme portions of this rhetoric, or what have we learned?
Yeah, so there's this growing faction of right-wing influencers, MAGA media personalities who have increasingly criticized the president's conduct with the war in Iran and the president's rhetoric in recent days as well. And so publicly, we've heard pushback from people who had previously been staunch allies of the president who are now criticizing him. People like Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, Alex Jones, former Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, with Alex Jones and Marjorie Taylor Greene even yesterday calling for the president to be removed from office with the 25th Amendment. But, Sam, I really think that this goes to point to what this growing faction of MAGA, part of what had been the president's base, is starting to feel like they're betrayed by the president, because they're pointing to the president during his campaign, saying that he was going to end wars, he was going to be a peace president, and they're saying, hey, this isn't what we voted for. And so we're starting to see this discontent in that part of what had been the MAGA world sort of starting to bubble up in recent days. So it'll be interesting to watch how that continues now that the ceasefire has been announced. But, you know, taking a step back here as well in terms of what the public really thinks about this war in Iran, polling has indicated that the public has, a majority of the public disapproves of strikes in Iran as well. Obviously, polling is just a snapshot in time, and we don't yet know how the public is going to be reacting polling-wise to the ceasefire announcement. But, you know, big picture here, this is all happening during a midterm election year. And over the next few months, as lawmakers are going to campaign, they're going to be facing questions about what they think about the president's conduct and the president's actions with regards to Iran, Sam.
That's a great point. I mean, they're going to be on the record about their reactions to this. And I'm wondering also, are there other GOP lawmakers? I mean, you sort of talked, Megyn, about like the conservative media ecosystem and the reaction there. But what about like the Lisa Murkowskis and Ron Johnsons of the world? What have they said about the threats to destroy civilian infrastructure?
Yes, there is some pushback from some members of Congress as well. People like Lisa Murkowski, who were saying that the president's language should not be excused. But Congress right now is on recess. They are back in their districts and they're back in their home states. And so they're really not being asked in the halls of Congress right now for their reaction by reporters, something that typically we would be able to hear a lot directly from members of Congress right away in the halls of the Capitol for their reaction to this. But it's certainly something that lawmakers are going going to be pressed about, likely in their home districts, and then when they return from recess as well, in terms of what they think about the president's rhetoric recently and whether they would ultimately potentially be on board with any of these Democrats' push for an impeachment and conviction of the president, which, like we discussed earlier, would ultimately need some Republican support in order to move forward. And right now, Republicans, even though Republicans have been, in some cases, critical of the president's rhetoric, have not said yet that they want the president to be impeached or convicted, Sam.
Megan, real quickly, while we have you, we've seen the oil markets react in real time to this more than month-long conflict in Iran that's led to the highest gas prices we've seen here in years. The market's responding in a big way, it looks like, after the ceasefire was announced. What more can you tell us?
Yeah, that's right. So the prices of oil dropped and stock futures rose in the aftermath of the president's ceasefire announcement. So in terms of the price of oil, the price of U.S. crude oil dropped more than 15% to about $95 a barrel. Now, just to give you some context here, yesterday there was a point at which it was trading at $117 a barrel. So pretty significant drop there. Stock futures also rising yesterday. For example, S&P 500 futures rising more than 2.7%. Dow futures up about 2.5% last night. And remember, this comes, oil and gas prices had been rising when the Strait of Hormuz was closed, because this is a major shipping route that usually about a fifth of the world's oil would pass through. And, that had been closed to most ships throughout the course of the war so far. So, I think a couple of big questions remain. One, how quickly does the Strait reopen? And ultimately, how quickly would that drive down the cost of gas and oil prices further? Because it could ultimately take some time for shipping to resume as normal and for that to ultimately, those ripple effects to be seen through the economy. Now, remember as well, here in the U.S., gas prices have risen a lot since the start of the war. Yesterday, they were at an average of about $14.14 a gallon. And so questions about, how quickly are we ultimately going to see those prices come down in the aftermath of the ceasefire announcement, but markets certainly seeming optimistic right now, Sam.
Yeah, it's been some dramatic swings for sure. Megan Leibowitz, thank you so much. Appreciate that. Let's get more analysis now with Joel Rubin. He is a former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State and author of the Briefing Book on Substack. Joel, good morning. Great to have you. Thank you for doing this. It's hard to conceive what's just transpired, right? In the space of one day, President Trump went from saying that an entire civilization was going to die to announcing now this 2-week ceasefire last night. What changed for the president? Was he desperately looking for an off-ramp, or does this feel like meaningful developments?
Well, Sam, it's great to be with you. And yeah, without a doubt, there's a helter-skelter nature to what we've just experienced. But, look, ultimately, when wars start, they're a sign of diplomatic failure. And now here we are back again at diplomacy. And so I think for the president and his team, they saw a window coming out of Iran. It looks like that deadline did have an impact on the thinking of the new supreme leader to at least get a pause and get some kind of ceasefire to see if diplomacy can be restarted. But make no mistake, this was a devastating war for Iran. We also in the United States did not achieve the goal of regime change, which I think the president realized early on was not viable without a land invasion. And so we're back to diplomacy and talking just as we were about 6 weeks ago.
Well, regime change, but also Iran's capability of continuing highly enriched uranium and potential nuclear capabilities. I mean, that was, at least according to the president, a big reason behind this invasion. So if that's part of their 10-point plan, Iran, that they can continue to enrich uranium, is that workable? I mean, that's sort of the language that the administration was using. But based on what's been released by Iran so far, some of the points had been previously rejected by the U.S. Do you think, Joel, that both sides are likely to reach an agreement, given what the context of this all is in these upcoming talks brokered by Pakistan?
Well, look, the terms that both sides are proposing have barely any overlap between them. They're maximalist demands coming out of Iran. Certainly the idea that now the United States would withdraw from the region. If anything, our regional allies are looking more to the United States today than they were 6 weeks ago for defense after being on the receiving end of Iranian missiles. So I'm not an optimist about these diplomatic talks. And look, the Middle East is littered with failed ceasefires over many, many decades between many warring parties. This ceasefire is one in a long line of temporary truces. And so we may very well be back at it. These parties have very different views of what needs to take place going forward. But I do want to add on the enriched uranium, while it may still very well be inside of Iran, the capacity to re-enrich that infrastructure was severely damaged in these strikes. And so I think we're going to hear a lot of that coming from the White House as well.
All right, that's a good point. I would also add, Joel, that the war has seen, obviously, thousands of people killed at this point.
That's right.
The destruction of critical infrastructure, as you just mentioned, and a surge in oil prices that has threatened the global economy with all the trickle-down effects there. On top of that, it's strained relations with many of our traditional allies in Europe, NATO. A lot of people are going to be asking in the aftermath of this, assuming there actually is a deal, is the U.S. better off than it was before? And was it all worth it? How do you respond to those questions?
Yeah, look, Sam, the military execution of our war plan that we saw over the past 4 to 6 weeks had many successes, but without a strong political and diplomatic structure behind it, without a real strategy that benefits from such military operations, you really come out looking bad. And I think that's where we are right now, where we did not have the kind of political and diplomatic program that could help us to leverage this war for better relations. And certainly with NATO now, Mark Rutte, the Secretary General of NATO, is going to be in Washington today. There are a lot of tensions. And so we mismanaged this on the political and diplomatic level without a doubt. And I think the countries around the world are going to be increasingly demanding of the United States more answers before military action takes place. So not much better off on those levels. And ultimately, that's the world we live in. We are not in a constant state of war. We need to engage and deal with our allies effectively. We need to have political visions that the American people support. And right now, clearly, as you're discussing with your colleagues, that's not the case.
Right. And it's pretty clear there's no appetite for a constant state of war.
That's right.
To use your words. Joel, real quickly, there's another wrinkle to all of this. Pakistan says the ceasefire includes Israel's invasion of Lebanon. Israel disputes that, right? So the end of attacks on Lebanon is one of Iran's demands in that 10-point plan. So could Israel's refusal to halt hostilities on Lebanon and specifically Hezbollah and withdraw its troops threaten peace prospects between the United States and Iran?
The complexities of the Middle East, right? I mean, just as you think you got one conflict solved, another one rears its head. Look, I think that this is going to require Iran and the United States to engage. Hezbollah launched strikes into Israel, remember, several weeks ago, or early on in the action, and that's why Israel invaded. Now Israel is in deep in Lebanon. So I think that's going to have to be part of these negotiations, but there will need to be some pullback by both the Israelis and Hezbollah to calm that down if there's going to be a chance for negotiations between the U.S. and Iran in the coming days.
Joel Rubin, we really appreciate your insight this morning. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sam.
We move now to Northern California and the latest on a shooting involving ICE agents that's under federal investigation this morning. Video shows officers opening fire on a car as the driver accelerates toward them. ICE says it happened yesterday during, quote, a targeted traffic stop as agents moved in to arrest a suspected gang member they say was wanted for murder. NBC News correspondent Maggie Vespa has the full story.
Dramatic new video of an ICE shooting in California east of the Bay Area. You see multiple SUVs and trucks pulled over, flashers on. At least 3 officers outside that black car, which suddenly backs up. Then the car turns and speeds forward. Officers, guns drawn, appearing to move out of the way. Zooming in, at least 1 officer appears to fire. The car speeds to the left over the median. The video, which has no sound, ends there and doesn't show what led up to the driver taking off. ICE saying in a statement officers were conducting a targeted vehicle stop to arrest Carlos Ivan Mendoza Hernandez, an 18th Street gang member wanted in El Salvador for questioning in connection to a murder, and that he weaponized his vehicle in an attempt to run an officer over, adding our officers fired defensive shots. They say Hernandez was taken to a hospital, his condition unknown. The FBI is now investigating. It comes as the city of Minneapolis releases this new video of another ICE shooting back in January, which contradicts the Trump administration's original account. DHS previously said an officer shot and wounded a Venezuelan man during an immigration enforcement operation after he and another man attacked the officer with a shovel and broom. But the new video shows one man appearing to drop a shovel as another runs toward a house empty-handed. A third person, believed to be the officer, tackles him. 2 unnamed ICE officers were suspended in February, with the agency saying in a scathing statement they appeared to have made untruthful statements, adding they could face potential criminal prosecution. Maggie Vespa, NBC News.
All right, Maggie, thank you. It might technically be spring, but at least here in New York, it is not feeling like that very much outside this morning. There are freeze warnings in effect from the Ohio Valley to the Northeast. We got all the details for you right now with your Morning News Now weather and meteorologist Angie Lastman. I got a little excited when I saw some warmer numbers in there, but it turns out it's not for the Northeast.
Yeah, I hope no one put away their winter coats across this region because, Sam, I pulled mine out and wore it this morning because temperatures are quite chilly. Notice we've got these freeze alerts up. We've got freeze warnings across parts of the mid-Atlantic, stretching back as far west as Indiana. Notice Indianapolis, Columbus, Charleston, Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, and New York, all included in those, as our temperatures sit well below normal for this time of year. We do have some locations that are approaching record lows at this hour as well, so we'll wait and see how that kind of shapes up. But notice Pittsburgh right there at the mid-20s, feeling like 25, feeling like 22 degrees in New York City this morning, 22 for the wind chill in Detroit. And this is really going to set the stage for what we deal with even into the afternoon hours today, which is below normal temperatures. We'll get a little bit of warming going, but not a whole lot. We still end up below that typical mark for this time of year. 59 for Roanoke, 60s in Charleston. Not terrible the farther south you go, but really all the warmth is confined essentially across parts of the Midwest in the Central Plains and stretching out west. That's where you see the 60s, the 70s, the 80s. But the good news is much of that warmth is going to start to work its way to the east here as we get into tomorrow. So still a couple of us on the low end of things for this time of year. But notice there's some 80s out there. Wichita, Paducah, even Boston will top out right at 54. That's a typical temperature for this time of year. And we only get warmer beyond that. Notice Washington, D.C. on Friday, 75 degrees. That's going to feel great for some folks looking for some warmth. We've got upper 70s in Asheville, in Evansville, in Wichita, and even Chicago. You go from those mid 50s on Friday to the low 60s on Saturday, and by Sunday, upper 70s. So it's not all bad news is the moral of the story here, Sam. We are going to see some temperatures kind of moderating out, and they'll deliver. We'll finally get maybe them to stick around beyond that. But in the meantime, the jackets are necessary this morning.
I'm hesitant to say it feels like the end of winter, but it kind of feels
right.
like
you don't
the
want
end
to tempt
of
Mother
winter.
Nature. If I know one thing, it's that.
Been burned by that before. Thank you so much.
Of
It
course.
is obviously a very busy news day here. Much more to come on Morning News Now. Later this hour, the cost of war. Why economists say the conflict in the Middle East could soon drive up the cost of food here in the U.S. if it hasn't already. But up first, scenes from the far side of the moon. We're going to show you the stunning, never-before-seen images captured by the Artemis II crew when we come back. We are back now with some truly stunning new images from the Artemis II mission that were captured during this historic 7-hour flyby of the moon. It seems like every single hour brings a new discovery. We're now getting our first close-up crater shots of the far side of the moon. These 4 astronauts are the first humans to see this part of the lunar surface 250,000 plus miles away. They also broke Apollo 13's record for the furthest distance traveled from Earth into deep space. Now they've witnessed a solar eclipse from space as well, but the work and the discovery is not done yet as the crew makes its way back towards Earth. NBC News senior correspondent Tom Costello has more on the new photos and the crew's voyage home.
From the Orion crew, a mega download of new lunar photos. Spectacular and humbling. Granular details of never-before-seen craters. A slice of the Earth 250,000 miles away. Then rising above the lunar pole, updating the iconic Apollo 8 picture from 1968. The massive Oriental Basin, the moon's Grand Canyon 600 miles across. The Terminator line between sunlight and darkness.
It is just like impossibly rugged.
And a stunning 53-minute solar eclipse. The crew photographing and donning their protective shades with the sun's corona burning around the edges.
I have to start with a giant wow. What you did yesterday really made a difference scientifically.
Awestruck lunar scientists were comparing the images to their own model, with Orion back in the Earth's gravitational pull.
Integrity This is the International Space Station.
A rare space-to-space radio conversation with astronauts on the space station.
We can tell that you guys are definitely experiencing moon joy, and I feel like even we are experiencing moon joy right now.
As the Orion crew speeds home at 1,300 miles per hour.
I'll breathe easier when we get through re-entry and everybody's under chutes and in the water.
Splashdown set for 8:07 p.m. Eastern Time off the coast of San Diego Friday night. Already a naval recovery ship is moving into position. If the weather doesn't cooperate, they could move that recovery site further out into the ocean. Back to you.
All right, we'll be closely watching that. Tom Costello, thank you, my friend. And now, for more on how these images are already helping scientists, let's bring in Dr. Emily Rice. She's an astronomer and space scientist. Dr. Rice, good morning. We learned a new term there, moon joy. Before we get into the science side of this historic mission, the astronauts are seeing parts of the lunar surface no one has ever seen before, but we still have all these incredible photos. Do you have a favorite among them?
Not yet, I think. I do have an early favorite, but I don't want to call anything yet because I think the photos that we've gotten so far are like the quick glance good ones that you put into the group chat before you're even home from vacation. Like, I'm sure there are just, carousels of photos that are either still on their camera or still at mission control, just waiting for us to see them. I'm amazed at how many photos the astronauts have taken, how quickly the comms and social media teams at NASA are working to get these photos out. It is just, it's moon joy all over the place. Moon joy from the scientists, moon joy from the public. You can't overstate it. I think Tom's words of spectacular and humbling are very, very fitting.
All right, you're keeping your cards close to the vest. Fair enough. As we look at these images, I mean, just the granularity, right, of the craters that you're seeing. Can you, Dr. Rice, just sort of help us understand what we're looking at here and why these pictures are so important for scientists and for future exploration?
Yeah, so this is the far side of the moon. We just don't get to see this from Earth. We do have orbiters. My favorite is the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter that's been an orbiter on the moon for a while. It takes some fabulous images. But, once that technology goes up there, we can't get it any better. And so having the humans go up there with brand new cameras, even their iPhones, some of them, the pictures you can look at closely when you download them from NASA and see what device they were taken with, which is really cool. Like having them up there with humans to make the choices of where do I look, how much do I zoom, what settings do I use. These photos are just absolutely phenomenal. And they have this view that's this, they're further away from the moon than humans were before, but with this, cutting edge technology, and they can zoom in. And so they can make these decisions about getting the different fields of view and seeing these details, also having the Terminator line be there and then moving ever so slightly as they're spending these 7 hours looking at the moon. That Terminator line in the shadows gives you a really, really nice perspective, which, if you've looked at the moon, anytime you look and see those shadows, it makes like the 3D aspects really, really pop, which otherwise it kind of, when everything is kind of directly illuminated, it looks more flat, kind of like a poster. And I love one of the things that Christina Cook said yesterday, that the moon went from looking like a poster to looking like a real place from their eyes, which I thought was very cool.
And just that image through the window, it just takes your breath away. These are truly incredible. There's no hyperbole to that. The crew, Dr. Rice, also had the opportunity to witness a solar eclipse from space. Tell us about that. What can we learn from observing events like that from space as opposed to seeing them from Earth?
Yeah, I think this is the first time that people have seen a solar eclipse from space. My pedantic astronomer friends would want us to say that it's an occultation instead of eclipse, but I'm not going to split hairs right now. But we did have the moon moving fully in front of the sun. Of course, you don't have the size of the disks exactly lined up the way that you do from the Earth. And so the moon, really, that's why the eclipse lasted so long. Like, we know from Earth that the totality is only, seconds to minutes when we get lucky and we're in that path of totality. For the astronauts in Orion, it lasted much longer than that. And so technically an occultation, but we won't split hairs. And so that was super, super cool. They couldn't see the very, very near in corona and the prominences like sometimes we can see from Earth, but from space, you can see just so much more because you don't have the effects of observing the eclipse through the Earth's atmosphere. And so they were also talking about when they were on that dark side or the far side and seeing the moon in darkness, they were also seeing flashes of impacts on the moon. And I think I heard that they noticed 6 of them. And those are things that the scientists are really, really excited about, because seeing these impacts, figuring out where they came from, how often they happen, tells us a lot about the space environment that's going to be very, very important for when we land humans on the moon and eventually keep humans on the moon, hopefully, with the moon base.
Hopefully so. One thing that was wild to me, we saw a photograph a second ago of the 4 astronauts wearing these glasses. Those look like the same eclipse glasses. There it is. Similar to the ones that we wear on Earth. If they aren't the same when viewing an eclipse, wouldn't they need stronger protection? How does that work?
Yeah, no, those are fine. And in fact, they don't need those during totality. So that's a little bit of a PR shot. They need those. So those are really protecting from the sun's light. It's blocking out most of the light is all that they're doing. And so they need those to keep their eyes dark adapted for, like, kind of preparing for the eclipse, because you don't want to wait when that sun is gone and then let your eyes dark adapt, because your eyes will collect more light and see more faint things after you're dark adjusted. You know this from going into a dark room, and if you let your eyes kind of relax for a little while, you'll be able to see more things. And so that PR shot was kind of, you need that before and after the total part of the eclipse. And so I think that might have been just for fun, but it is really like we use the same sun protection on Earth as we do from the moon. They should have a little bit more for extra radiation and things like that. But that was a very, very cool shot to get.
The wonderment level is like an 11 out of 10 on this. Dr. Emily Rice, thank you so much for joining us and for all of your insight. We appreciate it. Coming up next, all things in moderation, as your parents always say. The new research that says even occasional heavy drinking can cause serious health problems years down the road. Plus, why you might want to think twice before adding more salt to your next meal. Dr. Sayal is in. He's going to join us next in our weekly checkup. We'll be right back. And welcome back now. We have our weekly medical checkup this morning and a new warning about the long-term impacts of occasional heavy drinking. Plus, why Americans are growing more skeptical about AI in their health care. NBC News medical reporter Dr. Akshay Sayal is here with us to help break it all down. Dr. Sayal, good morning. Great to see you. Let's start with that new research when it comes to alcohol and some suggestions at this point that occasional heavy drinking could have serious consequences down the road. What have we learned about it?
So, Sam, you know, when you go to a doctor and you're filling out the questionnaire and they ask you, how many drinks a week do you drink? And,
yes.
and you've seen that. This has been known that the amount of drinks that you drink is the more you drink, the more harmful it is. But what we don't really know is, if you have these sort of smaller periods of heavy drinking and you don't drink otherwise, what is that doing? And that's where this research comes in. It's research out of USC by Dr. Brian Lee. He and I have actually worked on a story together on alcohol liver disease, really finding that, just one heavy drinking day a month, which is more than 4 drinks a day for a woman, more than 5 drinks a day for men, in people with fatty liver disease, something that affects, Sam, 33% of Americans already, can triple your risk of liver fibrosis or really fatty infiltration of the liver, serious liver scarring down the line.
So that's the here and now. If you had episodes earlier in your life where you had heavy drinking, can that come back and get you? Or you were saying the liver is a very resilient organ. The
liver is, Sam. It's one organ in the body that can regenerate. So if there's not too much damage done, maybe just a little early stages, it can regenerate. It can sort of heal itself. So, Sam, doctors' orders here, avoid the binging, avoid the binge-style drinking. Spreading alcohol over time is less harmful. But really what I tell my patients, the less you can do, the better.
Indeed. And it is also interesting to see the cultural shift among younger Americans, younger adults, about not drinking as much as their predecessors.
I love it.
It's a great development. So let's also talk about this next topic, which might have you thinking twice about adding more salt to your diet. What do we know about how excess salt has been linked to heart disease?
So, Sam, the excess salt can increase the risk of blood pressure, which the higher the blood pressure can increase the risk of heart disease. And really, there's also a risk, a lot of people don't know this, with dementia, a lot of salt use and cognitive decline. So with this study, what they looked at was 8,000 people in Brazil, and they wanted to see, men versus women, who is adding more salt to their diet. Can you take a guess who it is?
I mean, I know what my premonition would be. It's men. Is that not right?
It's
men.
Men.
Shocker. Okay, yeah.
Men tend to add more salt to their diet, and the reason this is important is because it is so easy to eliminate. I tell my patients, stop eating out, or stop ordering in, no DoorDash, no Uber Eats, cook at home as much as you can. And try your food first. Some people add salt and think, you might not need it. Try the food before, and and see if you actually really need that.
Some of it is so saturated in sodium to begin with, though, right?
Yes.
Like when you eat out. So finally, we're seeing this trend, right, where AI is being used more and more as a replacement for doctors for things, at least from scans to scheduling. But I guess early surveys show that Americans may want to keep their health more human. What does the data show on that?
So I'm curious, have you put your health information in ChatGPT? Have you asked it a question?
Guilty as charged. If it's my health, I want it to be a human-to-human conversation. That's just me, but I know other folks might feel differently.
Yeah, I've had a lot of patients come to me and sit in front of me and literally pull out ChatGPT and put in their symptoms and show me what it says and ask what I think about it. And, I think it's great. I think it's good that people are taking initiative, but, the key is you want to make sure you're running it by a doctor, like you just said, that ultimately the human is signing off. This survey out today really just shows that less people are trusting it.
Yeah.
Surprised the new shiny technology may not be so shiny after all. The doctor's orders here, Sam, just make sure that a human being is supervising it, and don't completely rely on AI. Don't ask ChatGPT or other AI companies what prescriptions you should be getting.
So a hybrid model, and to be clear, we do not want to turn our backs on the doctor's orders.
Correct.
We're going to follow those. Dr. Sayal,
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Anytime.
So coming up, continuing coverage, obviously, on a very busy news morning and that temporary ceasefire in the Middle East. Up next, we're going to have an update on the terms of the deal between the U.S. and Iran and why the fighting could continue in Lebanon. All of that and more when we come back. And we are back now with the very latest out of the Middle East. This morning, Iranian media is reporting strikes on 2 sites linked to Iran's oil industry. Now, it was not immediately clear what caused those blasts, as the U.S. and Israel said that they have stopped their attacks on Iran as part of this 2-week ceasefire just announced. Also this morning, President Trump made another announcement on Truth Social, vowing to work closely with Iran, talk about a swing in language, on a, quote, very productive regime change, and claiming there will be no enriched uranium in Iran, while considering tariff and sanction relief for the Islamic Republic. A lot to unpack there. The last-minute deal between the U.S., Israel, and Iran came last night late. This was after more than 5 weeks of war. President Trump announcing the truce on Truth Social less than 2 hours before his 8 p.m. self-imposed deadline for Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz and reach a deal to end the war, or, quote, a whole civilization would die. NBC News senior national correspondent Stephanie Gosk joining us now from Tel Aviv in Israel with the very latest. Steph, it's good to see you. Obviously, there's very different interpretations on this 10-point plan, but the Trump administration has characterized it as workable. What are we learning about the ceasefire deal between the U.S. and Iran, as tenuous as this may be, and what comes next?
Yeah, well, Sam, the first thing I'll tell you is that news of a ceasefire is incredibly welcome in neighborhoods like this in Tel Aviv. I mean, for weeks they've been dealing with bomb sirens and rockets and going into shelters, and they are hopeful that they don't have to do that for at least a little while. The ceasefire deal is fairly straightforward. All sides agree not to shoot rockets at each other, and Iran is supposed to guarantee the safe passage of oil tankers, gas tankers, and ships through the Strait of Hormuz. But don't expect those oil tankers to start up their engines just yet, because a lot needs to be worked out in terms of their safety. In talking about the 10-point plan, a couple of things to draw your attention to. Also, that post that President Trump just put out there on Truth Social, talking about the fact that there will be no enrichment of uranium. Well, part of Iran's 10-point plan is that they want the right to continue to enrich uranium. A couple of other things that they've included on that plan that probably are non-starters include all of the U.S. troops in the region being removed. That's likely not going to happen. But sanction relief is certainly something that's going to be part of these discussions. Now, Pakistan, which has been integral to this ceasefire deal and will continue to bring both sides together in negotiations for a longer-term peace plan. They are bringing both sides, all sides together in Islamabad later this week for negotiations on Friday, Sam.
Steph, it looks calm from where you are, and you just mentioned a second ago that there's just this sort of like collective sigh of relief there yet. But are you still hearing any rocket fire? I know there were reports of that. So is the ceasefire actually held first? And then where does Israel fit into the ceasefire deal? Do they commit to a ceasefire against Lebanon? That seems to be another huge component to questions that are arising this morning.
Yeah, definitely. There are a couple of things to look at right now. There was some rocket fire last night, but it was kind of in between that moment of the announcement of the ceasefire and that deadline from President Trump. But there has been rocket fire and drone attacks on Gulf nations, according to government officials in both Kuwait and UAE. That could be a problem. And then you mentioned Lebanon. So the Prime Minister of Pakistan said that Lebanon would be included in the ceasefire deal. And then this morning, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu here in Israel said Lebanon will not be part of that deal, and then issued a warning to residents in southern Lebanon to leave their homes because the attacks were going to continue. As you know, Hezbollah, the Iran-funded and supported militia group that is in Lebanon, fired missiles onto Israel when this war began. And Israel has responded. They've continued to fire rockets almost on a daily basis. So look at Lebanon to be a real sticking point going forward. Sam?
Steph, thank you so much for your reporting, and please stay safe out there. More than just political fallout from the war in Iran, the turmoil overseas is impacting the global economy, obviously broadly, with gas prices just to start. Economists warn the disruption in the Strait of Hormuz could have serious ripple effects across agriculture and potentially impact how much Americans pay for food if it hasn't already. NBC News business and economy reporter Ali Canal joining us now with much more on this. Ali, good morning. It does seem like there's just so many layers to this conversation.
So many layers, and obviously a big focus point is the Strait of Hormuz. Who ultimately controls this? President Trump was just speaking about a possible joint venture between the U.S. and Iran. Would Iran continue to charge ships to get through? But the Strait is very critical when it comes to oil transportation. It transports 20% of the world's oil supply. Obviously, a big ripple effect to that is gas. But food prices, also something that could be impacted here. So we dug into that a little bit more. Take a look.
What starts in the Middle East is quickly moving through the global supply chain, and soon likely into your grocery bill. From corn, wheat, and soybeans to bread, meats, and more.
We're talking about all the crops and all the food products that we consume on a daily basis.
At the center of it all, fertilizer. About 1/3 of the world's fertilizer ingredients moves through the Strait of Hormuz. Now, ships only getting through that key route in a trickle, causing a spike in fertilizer prices, with urea a major component at its highest price since 2022.
Anything that is grown and that requires fertilizers, which is most of everything that we consume, is potentially affected. Across the world, the ripple effects are going to be quite significant.
In Kenya, farmers are lining up early in the morning, hoping to secure just a few bags of fertilizer. This farmer saying fertilizer shortages are already making it harder to plant. And the World Food Program warns an extra 45 million people are at risk for acute hunger this year.
Price rises will be passed on to ordinary families who often are already struggling.
Concerns growing in the United States as well. Already, about 13% of households are food insecure here, with more than 7 million facing very low food security. Higher diesel prices adding even more pressure too, raising the cost of not only running farm equipment, but also transporting food to stores.
Energy prices are affecting us.
Will Harris, a fourth-generation cattle farmer in Georgia, says that rising fertilizer prices are hitting agricultural production across the country.
As beef prices have gotten higher and higher and higher, I fear that will eventually impact my volume of business.
Even before the war, farmers were already under pressure, from rising costs to tariffs and global competition. Last year, 315 farm bankruptcies were filed, up 46% from 2024. The federal government has stepped in with some relief, including $12 billion in aid announced last year. But now, the ongoing conflict with Iran adding another layer of strain.
We have had to raise prices, and we continue to raise prices.
The latest inflation report from before the war showing beef prices at record highs, up about 15% from last year. As those ripple effects build for farmers and for consumers, the question now, how much more can they afford to pay?
All right, and with all those input costs going up, the question also, how long is it going to take before we feel this in our pocketbooks?
Yeah, and that's important to understand. There's a bit of a lag here. So we have the spring planting season currently underway right now. Those crops will be harvested end of summer, early fall. That's when we could see potential price increases. But for other items, it could be more immediate. So Will Harris, that cattle farmer who we spoke with, he said he's had to raise the price of his beef products due to diesel costs. So he doesn't even use fertilizer on his farm. He said if he did, those pressures would be even more intense. The good news is that economists have told us there are some buffers in the system. Companies can rely on inventories. They can compress their margins. Also, a lot of farmers had already purchased fertilizer pre-war, but about 25% roughly had not. And those are the ones that are facing these higher costs.
There is some wiggle room, but likely short-term and long-term cost increase.
Exactly. And again, still those question marks. 2-week ceasefire. What happens next?
Yep, many question marks. Yes. Thank you, Allie. Appreciate that. Coming up next, the phrase a whirlwind wedding is giving a new meaning to this one in Oklahoma. How unpredictable weather nearly swept them right off their feet on their big day. That story is next. And finally this hour, a wild twist, you might say, to one couple's Oklahoma wedding. A tornado warning forced the bride and the groom and their 400 wedding guests to take cover. But the celebration certainly did not end just because of that. Nightly news anchor Tom Yamas explains how a gym full of strangers made the party even more memorable.
This isn't quite how Ankit and Visheshap pictured their Oklahoma City wedding. Hundreds of their wedding guests packed, not in a ballroom, but a gymnasium full of volleyball players. The happy couple had been upstairs celebrating, but in the middle of a traditional Indian wedding dance, tornado warnings went off.
I was kind of freaking out.
They hustled everyone to the basement to take shelter, crashing a girls' volleyball tournament in the process. The players, initially confused, quickly embraced the change in plans.
And then they just started chanting our names and screaming, Ankit spin me a few times, and I think that's when the floodgates kind of opened.
Started dancing with us, and so it really lifted the spirits a lot for both of us.
I was crying a little bit, but it was like no longer sad tears. It was just like these joyful tears of complete strangers, like encouraging me and encouraging us.
An unexpected moment of community, showing that when you come together, not even a tornado can steal your thunder.
We all can come together, and when things look rough and scary, like we can come together to make it fun and joyful.
Tom Yamas, NBC News.
When life gives you lemons. Well, that does it for this hour of Morning News Now. The news continues right now. It is a very busy Wednesday morning here. Top of the hour, we are live at the Pentagon this morning, where any moment we are expecting to hear from Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. Overnight, stunning developments out of the Middle East. President Trump touting a 2-week-long ceasefire with Iran. It was an 11th-hour deal struck moments before that ominous deadline for Tehran to reopen the vital Strait of Hormuz. Or, per President Trump's threat, quote, a whole civilization would die. That ramped-up rhetoric now prompting dozens of top Democrats on Capitol Hill to call for President Trump's removal from office. So what comes next here? We've got the very latest from Washington, the Mideast, and Wall Street, where the major market moves are up big this morning, and the price of oil is down. Good morning, and thanks for joining me. I'm Sam Brock, in for Joe in Savannah this morning. Let's take now a live look at the Pentagon press briefing room, where any moment we're going to be hearing, or expected to hear, from Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Dan Kane, General Dan Kane, for the first time since President Trump announced that 2-week ceasefire deal last night. NBC News national security reporter Gordon Lubold is in Washington for us, and NBC News military analyst Colonel Steve Warren joining us here in New York for real-time expert analysis. Gordon, let's start with you. What are you listening for out of this morning's press briefing?
Yeah, good morning, Sam. I think what we're going to look for and what we know is Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs General Dan Kane are really becoming the face of this war, which is now at this potentially major inflection point. And so we expect them to tout some of the gains that they made against Iran, so struck something like 13,000 targets. 155 vessels, I think at last count, they said that they sank. A lot of these are very conventional kinds of targets. I think the kind of subtext or the underlying question still remains, how if this ceasefire holds, if Iran can control its proxies and other militias that potentially are very angry right now and could lash out. But I expect them to talk a lot about what they've been able to accomplish in the last 40 or some days, and we'll go from there and see.
Yeah, how about what's happened in the last 40 or so hours? Colonel Warren, I'm going to pull you in here. At one point, this administration was threatening the end of an entire civilization. Then, about 12 hours ago, we learned that there's this tentative ceasefire deal, but it feels like it's rife with conflictions, things the United States said it would not capitulate on, whether that's highly enriched uranium or sanctions or moving troops out of the region, which was something apparently in the Iranian interpretation of this 10-point plan. What are you listening for to try to learn more about the state of the ceasefire?
It's so much, right? I mean, there does seem to be a lot of conflicts. The first thing that I'm listening for, quite frankly, is what are our troops doing today? And presumably General Kane, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, will give us some indications. Is he moving ships somewhere else? Is he moving troops somewhere else? What exactly is he planning on doing immediately? The second thing we're looking for, probably from the Secretary of Defense or War, is what do we see the enemy doing, right? Have they truly stopped doing all of their rocket attacks? Have they opened up the straits, et cetera? So that's the type of stuff that we need to look for today.
I would also add the Strait of Hormuz was not under Iran's specific autonomy prior to this invasion, right? And yet it almost sounds like it might be now. How key is that in this conversation?
Well, it's going to be very critical, and the president has made the Strait of Hormuz sort of one of the key points of this entire conflict. So if we allow the Iranians to continue controlling it, it may not work out.
Excellent point, Colonel Warren. Let's listen in now. You see Pete Hegseth there and Dan Kane. We're going to take a listen.
Iran has been a threat to the United States and the free world for 47 years. Chants of death to America, targeting our people, killing Americans, lying and blackmailing their way toward a nuclear weapon, so they thought. No longer. Not on our watch. Other presidents marked time and kicked the can down the road. President Trump made history. From the strike that took out Qasem Soleimani, to tearing up the disastrous Obama-Iran deal, to the precision campaign that obliterated Iran's nuclear sites in Operation Midnight Hammer, to the decisive military victory we just achieved in Operation Epic Fury. No other president has shown the courage and resolve of this commander-in-chief. President Trump forged this moment. Iran begged for this ceasefire, and we all know it. As the President truth this morning, a big day for world peace. Iran wants it to happen. They've had enough. Operation Epic Fury was a historic and overwhelming victory on the battlefield. A capital V military victory. By any measure, Epic Fury decimated Iran's military and rendered it combat ineffective for years to come. You see, in less than 40 days, one of our combatant commands, Central Command, CENTCOM, using less than 10% of America's total combat power, dismantled one of the world's largest militaries. The world's leading state sponsor of terrorism proved utterly incapable of defending itself, its people, or its territory. We untied just a fraction of our strength, and Iran suffered a devastating military defeat. Together with our Israeli partners, America's military achieved every single objective, on plan, on schedule, exactly as laid out from day one. Iran's Navy is at the bottom of the sea, whether it's the Soleimani class, their frigate class, their prized drone aircraft carriers, submarines, mine layers, sunk. Iran's Air Force has been wiped out. Iran no longer has an air defense, any sort of a comprehensive air defense system. We own their skies. Their missile program is functionally destroyed. Launchers, production facilities, and existing stockpiles depleted and decimated. and almost completely ineffective. Iran shot hundreds and hundreds of missiles and one-way attack drones at our aircraft carrier. They were obsessed with it, and they never got even close. Every single one of those shots easily shot down miles and miles away from the Abe Lincoln. They were blowing ammo into fantasy land. Contrast that with, most significantly, in last night's wave of more than 800 strikes, we finished completely destroying Iran's defense industrial base, a core pillar of our mission objective. What little they have left buried in bunkers is all they will have. They can still shoot, we know that. Their command and control is so decimated they can't really talk and coordinate, so they still may shoot here and there, but that would be very, very unwise. But they can no longer build missiles, build rockets, build launchers, or build UAVs. Their factories have been razed to the ground, set back in historic fashion. You see, had Iran refused our terms, the next targets would have been their power plants, their bridges, and oil and energy infrastructure. Targets they could not defend and could not realistically rebuild. It would have taken them decades, and we were locked and loaded. They couldn't defend against it. President Trump had the power to cripple Iran's entire economy in minutes, but he chose mercy. He spared those targets because Iran accepted the ceasefire under overwhelming pressure. The new Iranian regime understood that a deal was far better than the fate that awaited them. This new regime just happened to look at what happened to their predecessors. Their top leadership was systematically eliminated. Their previous Iranian supreme leader, dead. The Supreme National Security Council Secretary, dead. The Supreme Leader Office Advisor, dead. The Supreme Leader Military Office Chief, dead. The Defense Minister, no longer with us. The IRGC Commander, dead. The Armed Forces General Staff Commander, dead. The Intelligence Minister, dead. The IRGC Navy Commander, no longer here. The IRGC Intel Chief, dead. I skipped over a bunch, and I could go on and on and on, to include the so-called new Supreme Leader wounded and disfigured. This new regime was out of options and out of time, so they cut a deal. They know this agreement means that they will never, ever possess a nuclear weapon. Under the terms, any nuclear material they should have will be removed. Any material, they should not have will be removed. Right now, their dust is deeply buried and watched 24/7 overhead. The president has been clear from the beginning, there will be no Iranian nuclear weapons. Period. Full stop. Other presidents said it. President Trump did it. Operation Epic Fury. Less than 6 weeks, clear mission, decisive action, overwhelming firepower, America first, a historic battlefield victory. For decades, Iran killed Americans with roadside bombs in Iraq, using cowardly proxies to do their dirty work while they hid safely in Tehran. They struck our embassies with car bombs and attacked from the shadows, never daring to face us toe-to-toe. They thought they could bleed America with impunity. Well, they just learned the hard way what happens when you try to fight us directly. And even when they got lucky, one time in 40 days, and downed 2 of our pilots, they couldn't hold them. In a daring 14-hour rescue operation, 7 hours in daylight and 7 hours of night, both pilots were recovered safely. Not once, but twice. A daylight thunder run right up the middle of their country. Boots on the ground. A midnight raid right up the middle of their country. Boots on the ground. 0 American casualties. The Iranians humiliated and demoralized. We control their fate, not the other way around. That's why they came to the table. Iran's defeat is America's retribution for every American lost to Iranian terror, especially those brave troops killed by Iranian-made roadside bombs in Iraq that my generation knows so well, and for the suffering their regime has inflicted around the world. Now we have a chance at real peace and a real deal. The War Department, for now, has done its part. We stand ready in the background to ensure Iran upholds every reasonable term. And as everyone knows, nobody makes a better deal than President Trump. To the warriors of epic fury, I say well done. You're the backbone of our country. Your skill, your bravery, and sheer guts and grit showed the world what America is all about. I'm proud of you. We're proud of you. President is proud of you. Job well done. But stay vigilant and stay ready. To the families of our fallen, your sacrifice was in service of a historic cause, and we will always remember your heroes, our heroes. We will continue to honor them. And to our Israeli allies, thank you for being a brave, capable, and willing ally on this battlefield. The rest of the world and the rest of our so-called allies saw what real capabilities look like. They should take some notes. Our troops, our American warriors, deserve the credit for this day. But God deserves all the glory. Tens of thousands of sorties, refuelings, and strikes carried out under the protection of divine providence. A massive effort with miraculous protection. Dude 44 Bravo spoke for all of us. God is good. The chairman will now provide an even deeper military detail on the historic success of Operation Epic Fury. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for being here. I want to start this morning by honoring the 13 members of our American Joint Force who were killed in action thus far during this operation. Their sacrifice and that of their families is deeply important to us, and we are grateful for each of them and will continue to mourn their loss. Their names and their bravery will never be forgotten. On February 28th, the President of the United States ordered the Joint Force to execute Operation Epic Fury with the direction to accomplish three distinct military objectives: destroy Iran's ballistic missile and drone capabilities, destroy the Iranian Navy, and destroy their defense industrial base to ensure that Iran cannot reconstitute the ability to project power outside their borders. Over the course of 38 days of major combat operation, the Joint Force achieved the military objectives as defined by the President. We welcome the ongoing ceasefire, and as the Secretary said, we hope that Iran chooses a lasting peace. But as Secretary Hegseth said, let us be clear, a ceasefire is a pause, and the Joint Force remains ready, if ordered or called upon, to resume combat operations with the same speed and precision as we've demonstrated over the last 38 days, and we hope that that is not the case. I want to congratulate and thank the leadership today at U.S. Central Command, including the Commander Admiral Brad Cooper, the Deputy Commander Lieutenant General Kevin Leahy, the Senior Enlisted Leader Fleet Master Chief Compton, and every one of the component commanders, senior enlisted leaders, and especially the staff down at U.S. Central Command, who does not get called out for any of the credit, but grinds 24/7 to help offer the options that we bring to the Secretary and the President. I also want to highlight the forces in the United States European Command under the command of Alexis Grinkowicz, who protected the western flank in support of CENTCOM. And I want to thank our partners across the intelligence community. Our ability to see and understand what an adversary is doing help us to be as decisive as we must be on the battlefield. And that includes DIA, NSA, NGA, the CIA, and the National Reconnaissance Office, and others. I want to thank the other combatant commands who have thus far contributed along the way to U.S. Central Command. This includes Transcom, Stratcom, Spacecom, SOCOM, and Cybercom, all of whom poured all in support of CENTCOM's efforts. And I want to thank, as the Secretary did, our Gulf partners who fought alongside each and every one of us every day. From the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Bahrain, Qatar, Kuwait, and Jordan, all who joined us together to defend and protect our people and our assets, and who, if required, stand ready to do so again. And I want to thank my team at the Joint Staff who work literally around the clock in order to help me offer the options that I must with the associated risks to the Secretary and to the President. They are the hardest working people that I know, and I am deeply grateful for their service. Most importantly today, I want to thank America's members of the Joint Force who've poured everything that they can into Operation Epic Fury, and their families who've worked 24 hours a day for 38 days. The Secretary and I could not be more proud of each and every one of you. And we deeply appreciate the support of the American people, who we know always have us in our thoughts and prayers. And we can feel this literally every single day. As the Secretary said, the United States has devastated the regime's ability to harm Americans and our interests for years to come. Since the beginning of major combat operations, the United States Joint Force has struck more than 13,000 targets, including in that 13,000 more than 4,000 dynamic targets that popped up on the battlefield and were immediately addressed, thanks to the exceptional command and control system and intelligence, acumen, and agility of our Joint Force. CENTCOM forces destroyed approximately 80% of Iran's air defense systems, striking more than 1,500 air defense targets, more than 450 ballistic missile storage facilities, 800 one-way attack drones storage facilities. All of these systems are gone. We've devastated Iran's command and control and logistical networks, destroying more than 2,000 command and control nodes and degrading their ability to target U.S. and friendly forces. It is, and we know this, incredibly frustrating right now to be a lower-level Iranian commander trying to fight your fight. As the Secretary said, the Iranian Navy now lies mostly at the bottom of the Arabian Gulf, and we assess that we've sunk more than 90% of their regular fleet, including all of the major surface combatants, as the Secretary said. 150 ships are at the bottom of the ocean, and half of the IRGC Navy's small attack boats. Joint fires protected from the land, sea, and air executed more than 700 strikes against naval mine targets, and we had assessed that we destroyed more than 95% of their naval mines. And perhaps most importantly, we've destroyed Iran's defense industrial base, their ability to reconstitute those capabilities for years to come. We attacked, along with our partners, approximately 90% of their weapons factories. Every factory that produced Shahed one-way attack drones was struck. Every factory that produces the guidance systems that go into those drones was struck. Their missile defense industrial base is shattered, with more than 80% of their missile facilities gone, as well as their solid rocket motor production capability. It will take years for Iran to rebuild any major surface combatants, as more than 20 naval production and fabrication facilities have been damaged or destroyed, and nearly 80% of Iran's nuclear industrial base was hit, further degrading their attempts to attain a nuclear weapon. Throughout Operation Epic Fury, our joint force struck at the heart of Iran's ability to project power and threaten the United States and the region. And in order to do this, it required the service and sacrifice of more than 50,000 American warfighters deployed across CENTCOM, EUCOM, and stateside. The Joint Force flew more than 10,000 missions, including 62 bomber missions, 18 of which flew round trip from the United States to deliver bombs on military targets. Each of these missions was more than 30 hours in duration, and we did that 18 times. No other military in the world can do that. And it's a testament to the logistical force that quietly serves behind them. I cannot thank TRANSCOM and the Air Force Tanker and Mobility Force more. Combined with Army and Navy joint fires, we struck more than 13,000 targets. And along with our Gulf partners, we've thus far intercepted 1,700 ballistic missiles and one-way attack drones, defending our forces and our partners in the civilian population. And we remain ready to do so should the need arise. Along the way, we consume more than 6 million meals, and by my estimate, more than 950,000 gallons of coffee, 2 million energy drinks, and a lot of nicotine, but I am not saying that we have a problem. I've laid out the statistics, but it does not truly capture the nature of combat. This is gritty and unforgiving business. It's chaotic. It's hot, it's dark, it's unpredictable, and there's always unknowns. And our people proudly walked into those unknowns and continue forward. And through it all, the Joint Force has demonstrated the unwavering resolve that the nation demands of us. We are a mission-focused force, and our objectives always is to create the conditions for peace, and today we have, while be ready should that peace break, which we hope it is not. And we remain ready. Before I turn it back to the Secretary, I also want to quickly revisit the rescue of the Air Force fighter crew over the weekend. To give you an update, we've had, the Secretary and I have had the profound honor of speaking directly with many of the warfighters on that mission, from the downed crew that were picked up to those forces that went and got them. Hearing these stories firsthand has only deepened our appreciation for their tenacity, creativity, courage, and grit of the American Joint Force. This is a story that gets to the very heart and soul of who we are as a joint force, who we are as Americans. Selfless sacrifice in service of others. From the backseater, Dude 44 Bravo, whose pure and unadulterated joy at seeing those helicopters come into the valley to get his front seater in daylight because he knew the front seater did not have a jacket, and was so filled with heart-leaping joy at his front seater getting picked up, to the nighttime folks that went in and then got him, to the tanker forces that did the things that they had to do to give their own gas away, to the support packages, to those that went into the desert landing site not once, not twice, but 3 times as we fought through multiple contingencies. This was and is a joint force that has the guts to try, that does not quit, and who each and every day does the things that we must to dare to win. No lives were lost. We succeeded because the Joint Force is always at the ready. They trust each other, they trust their leaders, and they trust their training. And they remember first, foremost, and always that we do these things so that others may live, and we will never leave anyone behind. The success of Operation Fury thus far, and we hope it remains, culminates with this incredible rescue over the weekend, a direct example of the professionalism and courage of the United States military and our joint force. It's the service members on the front lines, our partners in the region, our teammates in the intelligence community, our civilian leaders in the OSW side of the house, the American workers who build the tools and weapons that we use, and the American people who back us up that help us to go do these things. I stand here humbled today, but frankly not surprised by what the Joint Force has been able to do. Their performance is fueled by a deep commitment to each other, their mission, and to our country. It is an incredible, deep honor for me to be a part of this Joint Force, and I'm humbled by the service and sacrifice each and every day that I am lucky enough to see. And finally, as I always do, I ask that we never forget our fallen and their families, especially those 13 fallen from Operation Epic Fury. May we always be worthy of their sacrifice and honor their legacy. And with that, sir, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll take a few questions.
Alexandra Ingersoll, One America News. First of all, thank you to our troops. What role is our military playing in escorting vessels through the Strait of Hormuz at this point? And the president said on Truth Social that the U.S. will be hanging around to make sure everything goes well. Obviously, Mr. Secretary, you just mentioned, we know the scars from hanging around in Iraq for decades. But what does that entail in terms of our military presence at this juncture?
Yeah, we'll be hanging around. We're not going anywhere. We're going to make sure Iran complies with this ceasefire and then ultimately comes to the table and makes a deal. So we'll stay put, stay ready, stay vigilant, as the chairman laid out. Our troops are prepared to defend, prepared to go on offense, prepared to restart at a moment's notice with whatever target package would be needed in order to ensure that Iran complies. As far as the Strait, you saw the initial agreement that was struck, which is Iran's letting ships go through. So they'll be that will be happening. They will be sailing, and ultimately, as the president, I mean, we've done an incredible job militarily inside the Strait of Hormuz. What Admiral Cooper, I failed to mention Admiral Cooper's name. He's done a phenomenal job, along with everybody at AFCENT and NAVCENT and ARCENT and all the components down there, laying the groundwork for Iran. Iran doesn't have the same ability to defend it the way they did before, and so as the president has pointed out to the rest of the world, we barely get any of our energy out of the Strait. Just a tiny fraction. It's time for the rest of the world to step up and ensure that that stays open after President Trump and the War Department brought Iran to the place where they are voluntarily opening it right now, as was announced last night. Yes, Jerry.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and thank you both for the update. President Trump posted on Truth Social this morning that there has been a very productive regime change in Iran, and that there will be no enrichment of uranium, and the U.S. will work with Iran to dig up and remove the deeply buried nuclear dust. So I just have two questions here. So both you, Mr. Secretary, and the President have referred to a new regime in Iran. So is this not the regime that was at war with us for 47 years? And what do we think of when we're saying that this is a new regime? What are we thinking and what are we saying there? And then my second question is, with any future deal with Iran, is their handing over of all of their enriched uranium and they're promising not to enrich any future uranium a non-negotiable for the U.S.?
Well, it's always been non-negotiable that they won't have nuclear capabilities. And so right now it's buried and we're watching it. We know exactly what they have, and they know that. And they will either give it to us, which the president has laid out. They'll give it to us voluntarily. We'll get it. We'll take it out. Or if we have to do something else ourselves, like we did in Midnight Hammer or something like that, we reserve that opportunity. But what's clear, what the new Iranian regime knows, is they'll never have a nuclear weapon or the capability to get a path to one. As far as the new regime, you heard the list that I read. It's a new group of people who've seen the full capability of the United States military and has a new calculus about what it means to negotiate with us. Hence why they came to the table wanting a ceasefire and the shooting to stop. So this new regime, which the regime has been changed, has a different interaction with the U.S. Right here.
Mr. Secretary, thank you. Of course.
I was going in front right here.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary and General Kane. Mary Margaret with the Daily Wire. Two questions. Iran has said that safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz will be possible in coordination with Iran's armed forces and, quote, technical limitations. What do you believe that means? And then we've also heard reports that Iran has continued striking targets well into this morning. At what point are we beyond a grace period? Are we giving them a grace period? Is there a miscommunication there? What's going on with that?
What we know is that Iran is going to say a lot of things. A lot of people are going to say a lot of things, claim a lot of things. What has been agreed to, what's been stated, is the strait is open. Our military is watching. I'm sure their military is watching, but commerce will flow. And that's what you saw the markets react to, is that reality. As far as shooting, that we were monitoring it last night in real time. Of course we are. Iran would be wise to find a way to get the carrier pigeon to their troops out in remote locations to know not to shoot any longer one-way attacks or missiles, because it takes time sometimes for ceasefires to take hold. We're watching it. We're prepared if necessary, but we we hope and believe that it'll hold. Yes.
Thank you, Secretary.
Okay, you have been watching the Pentagon press briefing live, where Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, you see him right there, and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Dan Kane, have been briefing reporters for the first time since President Trump announced that 2-week ceasefire deal last night. NBC News national security reporter Gordon Lubald is with us from Washington. NBC News military analyst Colonel Steve Warren is joining us now here in New York for their real-time analysis and expertise on what's going on. Colonel Warren, I'd like to start with you. Secretary Hegseth a second ago said America achieved, quote, every single objective here. Iran begged for this ceasefire, and we all know it. And he went and talked about how their air defenses have been wiped out. The missile program is functionally destroyed. They can't build missiles or rockets. And he suggested that the enriched material would have to be removed. Does that track with what we're hearing from the Iranians this morning? And what do you take away in terms of this projection of victory and how it could impact talks over a ceasefire deal?
Yeah, certainly a declaration of victory, isn't it? I mean, they are declaring victory. And I think that the chairman of the Joint Chiefs came in behind the secretary and gave us a little bit more fidelity, which isn't, I don't view it as total victory, although certainly a rousing success. He talked about 80% of Iranians' air defense systems being eliminated. He talked about 2,000 C-2 command and control nodes being eliminated. So certainly there's no question that the Iranian capability has been significantly reduced. It has not, in my view, been wiped out. Now, how does that translate to talks? Well, we'll have to see, of course. Most of the time, I don't think the Iranians are going to respond with emotion. They're looking to see what they can get out of this deal.
Yeah, I'm going to shift to Gordon for a second. Gordon, as you heard in that press briefing a second ago, and President Trump this morning putting out on Truth Social that there's been a very productive regime change here. He also says there will be no enrichment of uranium, and the United States will, working with Iran, dig up and remove all the deeply buried nuclear dust. Gordon, how are they going to remove that material? And would this even qualify as a regime change? Do we know enough information at this point to draw that conclusion?
Yeah, that's right. So the regime change, the kind of new regime, is interesting. You know, I think almost everybody recognizes that, you know, the leader of the regime is younger and is potentially harder lined than the old regime. It's still one that the president believes the U.S. Can work with. But there's a lot of questions there about this idea that it's a brand new regime and a new day in Iran. On the uranium, it's fascinating because, you know, what we were all standing by kind of waiting to see would potentially happen is would President Trump send ground troops into Iran for what would be clearly like the most dangerous mission, which is to go in for several days to extract the uranium and retrieve it and get it out there safely. Now, you know, President Trump is suggesting that now potentially as this ceasefire holds, if it holds, that it could be potentially safe enough for the U.S. to go in, send troops in to do it on their own. He kind of vaguely referred to the idea of the U.S. and Iran working together on that. That's, you know, there's a lot of questions there. He also mentioned the idea of the U.S. and Iran working together to kind of reopen the strait. And so there's questions there, too. We just don't know.
OK, as you bring up reopening the strait, I think that was fascinating because Secretary Hegseth was asked, is it reopened now? Under what terms? And so, Colonel, I'll turn it to you for a second. Do we know that it's open? Because he discussed the idea that, you know, they're cooperating, Iran is cooperating, but they've also put out a statement saying that anyone that wants to pass through the Strait of Hormuz needs to be collaborating with Iranian forces, and there's some technical limitations there. So what do we know about the Strait of Hormuz?
Let's start with the big picture, right? It was never physically closed. It was always, I used the word psychologically closed, right? The reason nobody's going through the straits is because nobody feels safe going through the straits. So how do we make them feel safe? That's the real question. We don't have that answer yet. And the Iranians are making assurances. Oh, as long as you swing by, maybe pay us a toll, you'll be fine. Is that enough?
Could this become a revenue generator for Iran? Is that the direction that this heads?
Well, it already has become a revenue generator, hasn't it? They've let about a half a dozen ships a day through, paying anywhere from $1 to $2 million toll per transit.
Yeah. I guess, you know, shifting back to the bigger picture here in terms of talks, Gordon, it feels like there are just so many conflicting points, even now with what the administration is saying about what Iran has to do and what Iran's own government is saying. especially as it concerns enriching uranium. I mean, it's one thing to remove all this material from the country. It's another to impact the ideology and the identity that they see with being able to develop nuclear capabilities. You also didn't hear General Kane use the word nuclear once in his entire remarks. What do you make of that, Gordon?
Well, I just think that the uranium was the kind of animating feature of what kind of brought the U.S. to go in, or convinced President Trump that he needed to go into Iran in the first place 40 days ago. And so I would point out that, we'll see what happens with the Strait, which now is, psychologically closed, as Colonel Warren says, but the uranium remains in the country. The regime is still very much in charge. It does not seem like there's any... It's not yet clear kind of where their thinking is in terms of working with the U.S. on any of this stuff. And I think it's really important to note the contrast between what President Trump has said, total and complete victory over this. You saw Secretary Hegseth and Chairman Kane really, as Steve said, it's a kind of a total victory. The question is, does this become like a mission accomplished moment, which, as viewers will remember, like President Bush said in May 2003, soon after the invasion of Iraq. And there's so many other questions. And as I mentioned earlier, the issue of how much control Iran has over its proxies and other militias that are now super angry and potentially can lash out. Secretary Hegseth said that they got lucky one time in the shoot down of the F-15, but we'll see if there's more of that.
Gordon, thank you. Colonel Warren, last thoughts here. What does the American public take away from what we've accomplished in these last 40 days?
I think there's two takeaways. Takeaway number one, and I will sort of support the chairman of the Joint Chiefs on this one. Clearly, the United States military is a force that's unmatched in the world. That's something that all Americans can be proud of. All Americans whose sons and daughters and mothers and fathers and brothers and sisters are thinking about enlisting, they're going into a professional force. The other thing to take away, however, is that we're not done in the Middle East.
No, they said that they're ready to re-engage. Secretary Hegseth said at a moment's notice. We have much more development here to follow, and breaking news this morning on these ceasefire negotiations, which are just now starting, at least as of about 7 o'clock last night, projected for Friday. We'll see where it goes. We'll be back with more news right after this. Okay, we are back now with growing concerns around the rapid advancement of artificial intelligence, particularly when it comes to writing code. So in the past year, AI systems have become so advanced that people without any computer science experience can make their own websites or apps just by prompting a chatbot. It's called vibe coding. Now, even though it can help engineers write more code, some experts warn that it may not be worth the security risks. For more on that and this new AI trend, we're going to bring in Jared Perlow. He's an NBC News AI fellow. Jared, good morning. Great to see you. A recent report here found that the majority of AI-generated code had made more mistakes than human-written code. You write in your article that there's some hidden costs to this advancement in technology. Is that sort of what you're getting at there?
Yeah, exactly. So we're talking about vibe coding, or basically AI-assisted coding. So this is a phenomenon that's been around for roughly a year, but we've seen kind of a stepwise increase in its capabilities since November. So anyone can now use English language instructions to instruct something from Anthropic or OpenAI, like code me a website, code me an app, and like magic, it will appear. The problem is that code is not as robust as human-written code. So there's broadly three different things going on here. One is that AI code makes more mistakes, as you just said. Yeah. The second is that it allows people who don't know how to basically make sure their systems are secure to create new apps. And then number three is for people who do know what they're doing, professionals, it allows them to create 10, 20 times more code. So maybe they just can't review all that new code that they're creating.
It's just a volume of material. Also, the technology has been developed just in the last year. We went from not being able to have the layperson sit down and put some instructions into a chatbot and be able to create code on their own to suddenly here it is.
Exactly.
And these are the dangers that exist there. What are your concerns, or is this also a major benefit in terms of just efficiency?
Well, I think that's a very live issue, and people I talk to, security experts, software engineers, they don't really know how this is going to shape out. So on one hand, it could just create huge tomes of code that nobody really reads. Maybe it's super buggy, and that starts underlying critical systems. The way I like saying it is like if everybody could suddenly design a car, but you don't know if that car has brakes or it doesn't have an airbag before you take it on the road. Not ideal. But at the same time, those systems are getting so good that maybe they can start reviewing their own code and help people identify those bugs.
I would argue not having brakes in a car is worse than maybe not ideal. That could be dangerous.
Yeah.
Is the moral of the story here? It seems to be that AI systems are so complex and they're changing so quickly that we don't fully understand the capabilities that are at our disposal. Or what is the takeaway from all of it?
Well, the takeaway is that these systems are advancing so quickly. People are really just changing their understanding about how to work with them every single day. I think there could be a point maybe in 5 years where the majority of code that underlies things like planes or critical infrastructure has never actually been seen by humans.
Yeah.
So I think the takeaway here, especially for non-technical people, is make sure you're using computer science fundamentals, security tests, making sure that your code is as error-free as possible, and talk to an expert whenever you can.
I wanted to get to one other issue here that I know is a big headline right now, and it regards Anthropic and this idea of holding off on the public release of its Claude preview. Why are they doing that?
So this is huge news. It came out yesterday. It's the first time that a frontier, a leading AI company, has not released its model to the public in many years because they're concerned about how powerful it is. So they say that their new model can basically exploit cybersecurity vulnerabilities in a way that could be incredibly powerful and impactful for security across government. So they're working with 40 different companies like Amazon, the government, to basically give them a limited preview before they release it to the public. So we're entering a new era.
Is it possible Anthropic is actually demonstrating some restraint here where maybe other companies are not going that far?
I think so. And I was just reading a tweet this morning. The person who's in charge of development says that it sounds terrifying. So when the person who's making it says it's terrifying, I think we should all start listening.
I think that'll resonate.
Yeah.
Jared, thank you so much for all that very interesting conversation.
Thanks so much.
Appreciate that. We're going to stay in the business world right now. More money news to get to. GoPro is planning major layoffs as the company's trying to boost its profits. NBC News business and economy reporter Ali Canal has your Money Minute. Ali, long time no see. Good morning.
Good morning, Sam. That's right. GoPro cutting about 23% of its workforce. That translates to 145 jobs, according to a regulatory filing. The company says it's facing higher costs and weaker demand for its wearable cameras and other products. It expects to take up to a $15 million hit from that restructuring. The job cuts come as GoPro tends to get back to profitability after a pretty rough 2025. And over in the AI space, Elon Musk is escalating his legal fight with ChatGPT maker OpenAI, seeking to remove CEO Sam Altman as part of a lawsuit set to go to trial later this month. Musk claims the company manipulated and deceived him into donating $38 million, saying he was misled by promises it would remain a nonprofit. OpenAI calling the case a, quote, harassment campaign as the battle between the two sides continues to heat up. And finally, a little red, white, and blue marketing. Coca-Cola is leaning into America's 250th birthday with limited edition mini cans featuring designs for all 50 states. The collectible cans will be available for purchase at Walmart, Target, and other major retailers starting this month. The company says the campaign will also include prizes and events as it looks to drive sales and tap into some of that patriotic spending. And it's not just those mini cans, Sam. There's also custom bottles they're going to be making. So pretty much for my next birthday, I think I'm asking Coca-Cola if they can plan the party.
A full patriotic portfolio from an all-American company. There you go, Ali.
Going all out for the 250.
Thank you so much, my friend. Appreciate it. Well, you know, the phone calls at the table while you're eating, you know, there's that, but there's also the texting and the scrolling and even the TikToking, if that's a verb now. It's a growing trend of trying to put phones away, certainly from the parents' perspective. Bars and restaurants across the country are asking customers, though, they're getting in on it too, to lock up their devices in an effort to bring back, I don't know, real conversation. NBC News correspondent Priscilla Thompson has more. Priscilla, good morning.
Hey, you guys, good morning. We have all been there. We're enjoying our coffee or our dinner. We are scrolling. We're checking emails. We're sending text messages. But that is no longer the case everywhere. Now, some bars and restaurants are offering a digital detox over dinner or drinks. Hello?
Kimmy. No cell phones in the diner.
This morning, a modern twist on an age-old problem.
We're on our way to a speakeasy where phones are not allowed.
From Arizona,
They have a wall full of lockers for your phone.
to Charlotte,
They give you these little pouches that you have to put your phone in.
more people locking away their phones to enjoy a night of fun. A growing number of phone-free bars and restaurants are now open in nearly a dozen states, Axios reports, including Washington, D.C., Texas, and here at Antagonist Coffee and Cocktails in North Carolina. What do you hope patrons walk away feeling?
Connected.
Guests lock their phones in a pouch that they can carry with them and can only unlock if they step outside. Servers are also tech-free, taking orders by hand. Instead of scrolling, there are games and conversation cards.
I just wanted to create a space where people could actually connect with each other, sit across from someone, and be in an intimate group with other people.
More than half of Gen Z and millennials intentionally disconnect from devices, surveys show. About 40% of Gen X and almost a third of baby boomers, too.
Don't think about it.
Even some Chick-fil-A restaurants are getting in on the trend, offering a free scoop for putting phones in the coop.
Honestly, if you're not putting your phone away to get that free ice cream, what are you doing?
So far, customers are loving it.
You don't have the accessibility of the internet right in the palm of your hand. You have to have a conversation. You're kind of going back to basics of being social.
The goal, fewer moments like this.
I'm sorry, Dad, I have to take this.
And more memories like these, swapping Snapchat for a snapshot.
You're not getting a social media post out of it, but you are getting this Polaroid.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
It's nice. It's almost like having a tangible memory versus taking a picture on my phone that's just going to live with 1,000 more photos.
And guys, I am loving this concept. Although I do eat with my eyes, I like to see the food. And oh my God, my food has just arrived. Thank you so much. And I will say, while the Breakfast Club here in Houston does allow phones, I am going to put my phone to the side so I can be fully present with this plate of chicken and waffles.
Priscilla is real. That's the real, authentic Priscilla. And yes, we want to see our food as well. Good call, Priscilla. We're with you on that. Thank you so much. Moving from the restaurant now to your kitchen. Loading the dishwasher is a pretty common household chore, but some experts and social media users say there's a right way and a wrong way to tackle this task. Okay, now you're intrigued. NBC News Now anchor and chief consumer investigative correspondent, quite the title there, Vicky Nguyen, joining us now with more on all the best tips and tricks. So there's a ton of optionality here. Is that sort of the point?
There is. And listen, here's the thing, Sam. You may know this from your own household. Nothing sparks a fight faster than asking someone, how should you load your dishwasher? Do we need to rinse the dishes before? Where do the bowls go? On top? On the bottom? And what's the best way to clean tough stains off of your pots and pans, especially cast iron? Can you use soap? To find out, we went to the experts at Consumer Reports to help you save time and money and leave your dishes sparkling. It's the subject of endless debate between couples.
Forks up, forks down, bowls on the wrong rack, cups in sideways.
What is the proper way to load the dishwasher?
You load the top first and the bottom?
No, you literally just throw the stuff in there.
According to the experts at Consumer Reports, a lot of us are doing it just plain wrong.
People put things in the wrong parts of the dishwasher, and they put things in there that really have no business being in the dishwasher at all.
Deputy Home Editor Paul Hope has the tried and tested methods to teach us the right way to clean dishes. First up, the age-old question, should you pre-rinse them before loading into the dishwasher?
Do you rinse beforehand and scrape the food bits off? Or do you put everything in the dishwasher as is from the dinner table?
You definitely don't need to pre-rinse, and in fact, believe it or not, that can actually cause the dishwasher not to work as well and not to clean as well.
Hope says modern dishwashers have soil sensors that rely on those food bits to determine how to clean the dishes, and detergent actually sticks better to dirtier surfaces.
But you should scrape off larger items, solid pieces of food.
But some sauce, a little few bits of food, that's okay to put the dish in the dishwasher?
Absolutely.
He says for the best results, place your largest and dirtiest items on the lower rack, where water pressure is the greatest. Try not to stack items. Spaced out dishes come out cleaner. And put smaller items like glasses, mugs, and soup bowls face down on the upper rack, as well as anything plastic.
Because those can actually melt or discolor if they're down on the lower rack too close to the heating element.
In the silverware bin, he says forks and spoons should go handles down. and knives, handles up. As for fragile items like wine glasses, you say it's okay to put that delicate stemware in the dishwasher.
It is, as long as the stemware is dishwasher safe.
To maximize your machine's cleaning power, he says run the hot water in your sink right before starting a load.
That means that all the water that's feeding into the dishwasher will actually be hot at the start of the cycle. It'll help it clean that much more effectively, and it'll help it dry better at the end, too.
Also, make sure to hand clean your filter, located at the bottom, every 6 months. As for dishwasher don'ts, Hope says never put in wooden items, serrated knives, or cast iron and nonstick pans.
The heat from the dry cycle can really damage a nonstick surface. Cast iron can pit, it can rust. It's not a good idea.
He says hand wash cast iron with warm water, and it's even okay to use a little soap. For steel and ceramic cookware, Consumer Reports recommends non-abrasive powders like these. In their testing of dish detergents, they found some of the top-rated products were actually the least expensive.
There are store brands that actually clean as well or even better than some of the leading brands from manufacturers.
Gain Ultra scored as high as Dawn Ultra, but cost 30% less. Walmart's Great Value dishwasher gel, competitive with the pricier Cascade Complete Oxy Dawn. And Target's discount Up and Up Ultimate Pods, just as good as Cascade's Platinum Action Packs with Dawn. And they're cheaper.
And they're often very cheap.
Good news for your wallet in the quest for the cleanest dishes possible. We also asked Consumer Reports about dishwasher powders. Do they clean as well as pods or gels? They told us they don't really test the powders because they're not as commonly used right now, but they say they are just as effective in other tests. That's what they have shown. They work really well. And here's the good thing. Most don't contain any microplastics, Sam.
You have like a microplastics beat going on, so I trust you for anything that you say related to this subject.
Yeah, I'm really trying to avoid them in my life where possible, just because there are easy alternatives and easy swaps. The pods tend to be a bad source
100%.
In laundry and in dishwasher.
By the way, sparking fights in our household.
Yes.
If you don't clean the dishes at all, if it just starts to stack up in the sink, then I know I'm in trouble.
That's a problem.
So.
You know, we were talking about, do you soak? Are you one of those people that soaks and then suddenly the dishwasher fairy or the magic fairy comes in? Oh, I was soaking.
AKA your wife.
Exactly. AKA typically your wife.
Vicki, you're so great. Always a pleasure. Thank you.
This is you.
Coming up next, a fashion industry first for the figurehead of all things chic. When we come back, why Anna Wintour is now turning heads with a viral Vogue cover shared with Meryl Streep. That story's coming up next. And finally this hour, you could call it groundbreaking. This morning, a familiar face gracing the cover of Vogue for the first time. Former editor-in-chief Anna Wintour is featured alongside actress Meryl Streep ahead of Devil Wears Prada 2. Leaning into the icy, iconic image that's followed her around for decades, and also raising questions about the future of the magazine business. NBC News correspondent Camila Bernal has more.
I don't care if it's not coming out until next year.
I won't have now.
Two of pop culture's biggest icons dressed in Prada and joining forces. Meryl Streep and Anna Wintour appearing on the new May cover of Vogue together, also releasing this video.
Don't I know you from somewhere?
Streep dressed as the fictional Icy magazine exec Miranda Priestley ahead of the release of The Devil Wears Prada 2 next month.
I hope that's not what you're wearing to the dinner. That's all.
And Wintour, Condé Nast's chief content officer, portraying herself, saying, "I'd like to say it's such an honor to be played by Meryl. However distant Miranda is from myself." It's the first time the mysterious media mogul is on the cover of the magazine that she ran for decades. The photo snapped by the legendary Annie Leibovitz. Streep saying the art of the new movie imitates the real-life picture of the shrinking magazine industry. Noting to Vogue that, quote, everything's disintegrating, adding, I was interested in the business part of it, that thing of carrying the weight of many, many people's jobs, running a big organization, keeping it going somehow. Vogue, which is owned by Condé Nast, is a private company, so it doesn't report its earnings. But what we know paints a turbulent picture as part of an ailing magazine industry. Condé Nast lost money for years in the 2010s, according to the Wall Street Journal. Earlier this year, Vogue cut its print editions from 12 issues a year to 8.
Condé Nast is nothing like it was when Anna took over as editor-in-chief of Vogue in 1988. The print business is in decline.
Now profitable again, according to its CEO, who's touting double-digit growth in digital subscription revenue. Condé Nast did not provide us with Vogue subscriber and circulation numbers. 20 years ago, Wintour distanced herself from Streep's sharp portrayal.
movie was fiction, and we really like fiction at Vogue.
Despite the film being based on a book written by one of her former assistants.
Not always warm and cuddly.
But she's generally been complimentary of the movie.
It had a lot of humor to it, it had a lot of wit.
And the world agreed, grossing more than $300 million.
And you have no style or sense of fashion.
With enduring cultural influence. Now, in the age of splintered media and countless influencers, Winter and Streep literally leaning into each other, excitement growing for the sequel.
Anna Wintour is, I think, Vogue's probably biggest asset still to this day. The industry does look to her,
hoping legacies can be cemented on the cover of a magazine and on the silver screen. Camila Bernal, NBC News.
A new layer of legacy. That does it for this hour of Morning News Now. The news continues right after this break.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.